The day the US economy crashes, your money could lose value overnight. ATMs could stop working. Stores could empty in hours. Millions could lose their jobs within weeks. And the terrifying part? The entire world economy is connected to America like a chain reaction waiting to explode. For decades, the United States has been the center of global finance. The dollar controls international trade, American banks influence world markets, and US companies shape the modern economy. But what happens if that system suddenly breaks? What if the stock market crashes beyond recovery, banks begin collapsing, inflation spirals out of control, and people lose trust in the dollar itself? In this video, we're going deep into the terrifying domino effect of a US economic collapse, from Wall Street panic to empty grocery stores, global chaos, political instability, and the future of world power itself. Because if the US economy crashes, it won't just affect America. It could change life on Earth forever. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning to breaking news flashing across every screen in America. Markets suspended. Banks under emergency measures. Federal officials urge calm. At first, most people wouldn't panic. People would still go to work. Coffee shops would still open. Kids would still go to school. But underneath the surface, something enormous would already be breaking apart. Because modern economies run on one thing more powerful than money itself: confidence. The moment people stop believing the system is stable, the system begins collapsing. And that's exactly how every major financial disaster in history started. The Great Depression. The 2008 financial crisis. The collapse of entire nations like Venezuela and Zimbabwe. Not because money physically disappeared overnight, but because trust did. And the scary truth is that the United States sits at the center of the global economic machine. If America falls hard enough, the shockwave spreads everywhere. A real economic crash usually doesn't begin with one giant explosion. It starts slowly. Inflation rises. Debt increases. Housing becomes unaffordable. People rely more on credit cards just to survive. Companies begin layoffs. Banks quietly tighten lending. Then one major event pushes the system over the edge. Maybe it's a banking collapse. Maybe it's a stock market crash. Maybe it's war. Maybe investors suddenly lose confidence in the US government's ability to control debt. And once panic starts, it spreads fast. Investors rush to pull money out of the market. Stocks collapse. Retirement funds shrink within days. Trillions of dollars vanish on paper almost instantly. But for ordinary people, that's only the beginning. Because the stock market crashing is dangerous. The banking system collapsing is catastrophic. Most people think banks simply store money inside giant vaults. That's not how modern banking works. Banks lend out most of the money deposited into them. Your paycheck becomes someone else's mortgage. Someone else's loan funds another business. The entire system depends on constant movement. But during a crisis, banks become afraid. If banks fear people won't repay loans, they stop lending. And when lending freezes, businesses can't grow. Small companies can't pay workers. Factories slow production. Construction projects stop. Employers start firing people. Suddenly unemployment skyrockets. And once millions lose their income, spending collapses too. Restaurants empty. Retail stores close. Tourism dies. Entire industries begin bleeding money at the same time. This creates a terrifying cycle. People lose jobs, so they stop spending. Businesses lose money, so they fire more workers. More workers lose jobs, so spending falls even further. That's how recessions become depressions. Now here's where things become even more dangerous. The US dollar isn't just America's currency. It's the world's currency. Countries all over the planet use the dollar for trade, oil purchases, debt payments, and international reserves. That gives America enormous power. But it also creates enormous risk. Because if global confidence in the dollar weakens, the consequences become historic. Imagine foreign governments slowly deciding they no longer trust the US economy. They begin moving away from the dollar. They buy gold. They buy other currencies. They create alternative trade systems. At first, the shift would seem small. Then suddenly the dollar weakens sharply. Imports become extremely expensive. Gas prices surge. Food prices explode. Electronics double in cost. Medicine shortages begin appearing. And average Americans realize something terrifying. Their money no longer buys the life it used to. This is where fear transforms into social instability. Economic collapse isn't just charts and numbers. It changes human behavior. When people feel financially secure, society stays relatively calm. But when survival feels threatened, everything changes. Crime rises. Anger rises. Political extremism spreads. People blame governments. They blame immigrants. They blame corporations. They blame each other. History shows this pattern over and over again. Economic desperation creates social instability faster than almost anything else. And in America, where millions already live paycheck to paycheck, the effects could spread incredibly fast. Imagine grocery stores with empty shelves because supply chains are failing. Imagine truck drivers unable to afford fuel. Imagine hospitals struggling to get medicine. Imagine parents unable to buy food. That's when panic buying begins. People rush into stores. ATMs run out of cash. Lines form outside banks. Social media becomes flooded with rumors and fear. And once mass panic starts, controlling it becomes almost impossible. So what would the US government actually do? First, the Federal Reserve would likely inject massive amounts of money into the financial system. Interest rates could be cut aggressively. Banks might receive emergency bailouts. The government could freeze certain financial activity temporarily. Stimulus checks might return. But here's the problem. Printing huge amounts of money during a crisis can create another disaster. Inflation. If too much money enters the system while production slows down, prices rise rapidly. And if inflation spirals out of control, it can destroy the middle class. Savings become worthless. Retirement accounts lose purchasing power. Workers demand higher wages. Businesses raise prices again. This creates an inflation spiral. In extreme cases, this can turn into hyperinflation. That's when prices increase so fast that money itself starts losing meaning. In some historical collapses, people literally carried bags of cash just to buy bread. Now, America is far stronger than countries that experienced total hyperinflation. But even severe inflation alone could permanently damage the economy for decades. But the biggest danger may not be the crash itself. It's how interconnected the modern world has become. The global economy today functions like a giant web. And the United States sits right in the center of it. If America crashes hard enough, other countries don't escape. They get pulled down too. Think about how many countries depend on American consumers buying products. Factories in Asia. Oil producers in the Middle East. Car manufacturers in Europe. Technology companies around the world. If Americans suddenly stop spending, global demand collapses. Exports crash. Factories shut down. Millions more jobs disappear worldwide. Financial markets across the planet panic simultaneously. Global banks begin failing. International debt becomes harder to repay. Currencies weaken. Trade slows dramatically. And because modern supply chains are interconnected, shortages spread quickly. One missing component can shut down entire industries. We already saw a small version of this during COVID-19. Now imagine something far worse. Ports slowing down. Fuel shortages spreading. Food transportation becoming unstable. Airlines collapsing. Governments imposing emergency economic controls. At that point, the crisis stops being purely financial. It becomes geopolitical. So, what happens if the US economy crashes? At first, it looks like numbers falling on screens. Then jobs disappear. Businesses close. Banks tighten control. Prices rise. Fear spreads. And because America sits at the center of the global financial system, the entire world begins feeling the shockwave. But history also teaches something important. Economic systems can recover. The United States survived the Great Depression. It survived world wars. It survived financial crises before. The real question isn't whether America could survive another collapse. The real question is how much the world would change before recovery finally comes. Because every major economic crisis in history reshaped society forever. And if the US economy ever truly crashes, the world after it may look nothing like the world we know today. Let me know your thought about this scenario in the comments section if it's terrifying or not, and if you see it scary you can click to the next video right now to learn about the benefits of saving money and how it could help you in this situation. Click the next video on your screen right now.